On the Jets on Monday without Christian McCaffrey. Jordan Mason showed out, $147 on the ground. Well, week 2 right around the corner, short week for the Niners, and Christian McCaffrey is a long shot to play, according to Ian Rappaport. Here's Kyle Shanahan with the latest.
Definitely. I believe if it was a playoff game, he would have played. It's not just the calf, it's the Achilles, and the Achilles is tendonitis, and that stuff comes and goes. And when it is acting up, something you got to be very careful about. Christian's very diligent about that stuff. And if it was a playoff game, he made it very clear to me that he believed he could go. But when you hear that type of stuff, and it's not a playoff game, and it's week 1, and especially when you're dealing with the lower extremities like that, it was a tough decision. But hearing all the words and stuff, in the long run, it made it easy.
Yeah, I would not play him. I wouldn't care if he didn't play until October 20th. Just this kid behind him, this Jordan Mason, the Georgia Tech undrafted guy, in that offensive scheme. Shanahan's history, his dad's the same way. They made a lot of 1,000-yard rushers off of middle and lower draft picks. Like, I wouldn't play McCaffrey. The other thing is, you're trying to break in eventually all these new wide receivers. They have another young tight end. I would get everybody else up to speed.
So I pointed this out. I believe you were on one of your many vacation days. When Christian McCaffrey had his most touches ever with the Panthers, he had 287 carries and a bunch of catches. The next season, he played 3 games because of injuries. Well, what happened last season? Christian McCaffrey, 272 rushes, 1 billion receptions. And it's like already out of the gate, he's hurt. Like, smaller running back, he's an awesome talent. That's undeniable. But you just cannot give him the ball that many times and expect his body to hold up.
I would rather he's ready for the opener in division against the Rams. Something else to point out about this game, you're always good at this. Open with the Jets, division rival Rams. That Vikings is a classic sandwich game where you think you're feeling pretty good about yourself. Watch Minnesota play. And by the way, Minnesota's schedule is tough. They can't take any weeks off.
No.
They're looking up at everybody they play. The Giants was their one breather. So I think this is a tough sled for the Niners, and I agree with you. Years ago, and I remember reading this. I must have read this 10 years ago. It was the White Sox won a World Series. It had been 20 years ago. 1991, they won the World Series. What year was it the White Sox won the World Series? And I remember reading an article, whatever year that was. And I was reading an article about a decade ago, and they were talking about that White Sox pitching staff, and they were talking, I'd never heard this before, but they were talking about arm fatigue for teams that go into the playoff. It was in 2005 that White Sox won.
Okay.
And then years later, somebody wrote an article about arm fatigue. It may have been Verducci or somebody, one of the great baseball guys, or Buster Olney, Tim Kirkjian, whatever it is. And they were writing about arm fatigue, and they were talking about when you ask your staff to go in these high-leverage pitching situations, don't be shocked if they really struggle. You're better served to, get them on the IR. Don't worry about them till, June. And I feel like McCaffrey and running backs, especially smaller running backs who initiate contact, there's an argument. They're better served not playing McCaffrey till October. And just getting you out from a 17-game schedule to 13.
What if you just played him a little and he limited to 15 carries?
It's very hard to play him a little. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. Because you give him the ball 3 times and he picks up 9 yards a carry, and you get addicted to Christian McCaffrey.
And then a dump off goes for 25 yards.
Yeah, it's just like saying, hey, I just want a little ice cream, and you're sitting there at 9 at night and you go in the fridge and you take a bite. I'm going to put it away. No, you're not. You'll eat the pint.
That's tough. McCaffrey's
so great that when you get a little sample of him, you're going to use him. He's an automatic first down. And so I think the smartest teams in this league tend to be a little ahead on analytics. I think there's an argument for the biggest running backs in this league. The guys, they were big carry guys. September, if they had a playoff run additionally, bring them in slowly.
Let me ask about Saquon Barkley. Was he overused in the opener? He had a lot of touches.
He did.
And it felt like they needed that game. Now, that game felt more than just a week 1. It was like, hey, these 2 teams could be battling for home field advantage in the playoffs, Eagles and Packers. I don't think that's the case here with San Fran and the Vikings. I think there's a pretty big gap between these 2. So I'm with resting McCaffrey, and then you unleash him against the Rams next week in a game you really want to win, right?
Yeah.
All right, next up is Tua and the Miami Dolphins. They face the Bills Thursday night, what should be a really good game. However, Tua, he's had a rough go against the Bills in his career. 8 starts, he's 1-6 and was injured in the other. Tua knows there's one way to end the narrative for the Dolphins against the Bills.
That's going to be what's written out there until we do something about that. That's going to be the narrative, that we can't beat the Bills, and until we do beat them, and we beat them consistently, like, none of that's going to change. And we have an opportunity to do that this year. We have an opportunity to do that this Thursday.
Yeah, you know.
Go ahead. Hat backwards at the podium.
No, forget it.
No.
He's just not consistent enough with his accuracy. Jaden Daniels. High is easy for me. Lamar Jackson. Electric runner who is more than capable to make throws. The low end is RG3, which is he just takes too many hits for a small frame. J.J. McCarthy. High, I think it's Alex Smith. There's a lower ceiling, is going to be about as good in the NFL as his coaching and his surroundings. The low end is Marcus Mariota. Slender frame, not really able to carry average talent. High end, low end, Bo Nix. Now, I think the high end is Drew Brees. Coachable, accurate, schemed up. The low end is Derek Carr. He's okay. Doesn't win enough. Never feel like he's a top 10 guy. And then Michael Penix. I think the high end is Mark Brunell, a really underrated all-time quarterback. The low end is Jameis Winston. Nobody doubts the first-round talent, throws a beautiful ball, but doesn't quite square up with what you want as a franchise quarterback. So I was just reading a little tweet from somebody inside the building, Michael Mulvihill, who does all our stats and ratings. He's just a lot of information. Big Ten ratings last week. Viewing time was up 148%. We kept telling you. I grew up with the Pac-12. This Big Ten now with USC and Oregon, Washington, UCLA, with Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, is big time. It's hard to turn the TV off. And for years, I've called Iowa the fake ID of college football. They'd win 8 or 9 games, argue they should be in a major bowl of the playoff because they beat up on directional schools out of conference, maybe Purdue, and then they'd go get shelled against the big boy. But you can only have a fake ID for so long. At some point, you're 21 and can drink legally. So it's time for a new fake ID of college football. You know, somebody that is new on campus, talking a big game, little thirsty, and not of legal age, kind of a poser. And I think it's Colorado. Deion Sanders is the new fake ID of college football. I'm sorry. A lot of talk, a lot of hat, no cattle. I mean, at least Iowa could hold their liquor. These guys are vomiting on themselves after a margarita. It's bad. They've lost 7 straight games to FBS teams. Worst run offense in America. Can't defend the run, can't play defense, tackle poorly. I mean, at least Iowa wore a collared shirt and sort of played the part. Well, maybe they can match up with Michigan. Man, Colorado can't even compete. They have the worst rushing offense in college football, and nobody talks more trash. A lot of stories about what they're playing over the loudspeakers. I don't care about those, but it feels like they're one big campaign to get Shedeur Sanders the Heisman or the #1 pick. It's just a timeshare sales pitch, and I'm over it. And let's be honest, Iowa graduated college. They got a good job at a local accounting firm. They're doing fine with their life. Colorado is a mess. They're on academic probation, and they're bragging about skipping class on Wednesday. The new fake ID of college football is Colorado. All hat, no cattle. Deion, though, says, we're just fine.
I feel like we got the right guys. You may see us shake something up a little bit. Phil Lodeholt is a wonderful offensive line coach. Pat does a tremendous job in calling plays, as he did the first game. So you just can't take a snapshot of one game and not understand the first game. Where we had 500 yards of offense. I ain't hear all these questions. But I understand it comes with the territory. When you lose, you're going to be ridiculed. You're going to be prosecuted and persecuted, and I'm good.
All right. I am comfortable with a new fake ID of college football. And I will say this. Iowa fans may have been impatient at times and want bigger bowl games, but they were humble. Could Colorado scale back a little on the trash talk? Just a little on the ad campaign? Get through at least 2 margaritas before you throw up on yourself at Senior Froggies in Boulder. J-Mac with the news.
No. Turn on the news. This is the Herdline News.
Wow, Wednesday off to a fiery start, just lobbing grenades. That was like a Molotov cocktail into the